Welcome Tuesday, Bits and Bobs. We did 3 podcasts yesterday, so we felt one was plenty today. Will Slattery is alongside me. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Fresh from the left wing. And Conor McKeown here as well.
Hi, Joe.
Fresh from fluting around the office most of the afternoon.
Well, hang on. I must...
I seen you walking around.
You bumped me off yesterday because
Fresh.
Damien Duff or some other irrelevant breaking news. So it's nice that you could fit me in.
You were doing a lot of
Tuesday.
pacing. You were doing a lot of pacing around the place earlier.
I'm a dynamic presence around the office. People are constantly saying it.
Yeah. So there's too much stuff, I think, to get through today. I'll shoot through some things very quickly. A lot of emails in. Apologies. We won't get to a tenth of them, I would think. I did like this, though, because road less travelled and all that. This is Rory Monks. And he said, "Hey all, long time, first time. I remember back when people were telling you the strange roads that they were listening to the podcast from.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
A pickup truck in like I-95, was it?
Very much highways and byways of the US, yeah.
Wisconsin. I remember there was very... Go on.
Yeah, it was a moment in time last year, people. I just grew legs for a while. I write this email from Kabul, Afghanistan. I set myself a challenge to get home from Singapore to Thomastown in Kilkenny without flying. And I found myself in places I never thought I'd visit. Love the podcast, especially Bits and Bobs. Kind regards, Rory. Oh, look, Kabul is in East Afghanistan. So if you're going west, Rory, that's Iran. Next stop. I'd avoid.
Yeah.
I did because I was very taken with your journey. What's driving it, or what's all this about? You know, I'm curious. Is it more existential angst, or is it something more meaningful for a different reason? I made your best route go north to Turkmenistan, then Uzbekistan, then Kazakhstan. And from there you have 2 options. You can go through Russia and Ukraine, again, would avoid. Or you can go Russia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, and then you're in Italy, and sure, you know the rest.
That's what I thought as well.
Yeah. What a mad thing to do. Singapore to Thomastown, Kilkenny without flying. Doesn't say why he's doing this.
I set myself the challenge.
I set myself the challenge.
Most people take a paddle or,
Yeah. So there you go. Beat that, anyone. I would almost, if Rory was a good talker, a good storyteller, have him on for a few minutes when he gets home, just to be like, what was all that about?
But if the Offaly lads can't get on, surely the Offaly lads will be the first.
I think we're having an Offaly lads special this year.
The Super Bowl.
Yeah, we're going.
Offaly lads.
That's definitely a 1-0 for over Christmas.
We're going to Tullamore.
Round table.
I think so.
Hi, Joe and crew, listening to Bits and Bobs Friday and feeling your pain about 2 days of exercise in a row. I have found the cure-all. 2024, I wrecked my back owing to a 1-year-old wanting to be up all day. A few months physio, stretching, etc. I messaged a personal trainer locally here in Kildare near the Curragh. The man has saved me. Best thing I've ever done. I'm back playing junior football in Kildare, golfing and running. If you read this, tell all your listeners there's only so far a physio can go. Invest in a personal trainer. They will bring you back to life. All the best. Keep up the great work. Brian. P.S. Everyone in Kildare hates Meath. That's a separate conversation.
I thought he was going to say, P.S. Everyone in Kildare hates me.
No.
Because he got a personal trainer.
Meath. Anyone done a personal trainer thing?
No. Jesus.
Why? Why?
I've
Why
always been...
You have a very closed attitude to things.
Just notions.
For a dynamic presence.
Mine has been the risk of picking a crap one. And I find there's no way to discern, or I can't discern, between who would be good and who wouldn't be good. And you have this suite of options in your local gym, and you're like, oh, what if I paid this and he's absolutely terrible? So I haven't ultimately taken the plunge for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do.
This is not related, although it is slightly, just because the last word is Meath. Why can't people from Kerry say Meath properly?
I didn't know that was a thing.
They say Meath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I, at some stage, may think about a personal trainer. There is a brand of personal trainer that's kind of influency, Instagram-y, that not for me.
So it's performative, like?
I don't know how qualified. No, sorry, I don't want to say that. I just think it's just one of those things that the influencers, so I feel like some charlatans have gravitated into that domain, you know. But someone who was really good and knew their stuff, I think it'd be very beneficial. Basically, I exercised 2 days in a row last week and was shot. I didn't understand why my shoulder hurt when I ran. You know, it was that kind of a decrepit, falling apart feeling. And I thought, I need to like go back to square one. Like almost like a Pilates reset. Like a kind of, I need to, there's parts of me I need to strengthen up or rebalance. All of those. And I thought Sean Boylan should put his hands on me. That was the other thing.
That was...
Just in case there was a spiritual...
Did that make its way on air last Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Did we discuss that on air?
Yeah. I felt I need to go and see Sean just to box off a spiritual aspect.
Get a couple of potions and that sort of stuff.
Not potions, but I just felt he'd know, like, your aura's off, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
What you need is a trip
What you need...
from Singapore to Thomastown via Kabul.
I'd love to do something. Yeah, I hear you. That is many years away. Is anyone watching The Long Way Home? Charlie Boorman, Ewan McGregor.
I'm saving it to give it all a go on the one go. Apparently it is. Have you seen it?
I just can't. I've watched all of them a billion times.
Yeah.
I love them. So good. Do you know what we're talking about?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. It's the reason I started riding a motorbike back in the day.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm doing that.
And have you ever done any kind of, Trans-Siberian or any across Route 66 or any of that?
I got as far as Dublin. But I did start motorbiking with the intention of mimicking them in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Route 66 or something. It never happened. Story of my life.
Yeah. I can.
It's good though, this one.
I can see the appeal of just taking off somewhere where you don't know where you're going and you're not sure what's going to happen when you get there. But that one sounds really... I mean, when you're bringing in Turkmenistan, I don't know enough about Turkmenistan to say that it's a good or a bad place to go. But if it's the alternative to Iran, I would say definitely go that way.
Yeah. It's quite interesting watching them get older. They're still very much the same people, but they crack fewer jokes.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, we were just talking here before we went on air about we haven't had any good rows on the podcast. Maybe the dynamic between them is getting a little bit grouchier as they get a bit older.
No, they still seem very good friends.
First one was, 20 years ago? It must have been.
04, I think.
Yeah, so
that was what... London to New York, long way round, obviously, through Russia, Mongolia. You know, Ewan McGregor adopted a girl on that trip.
Now that you said it, yeah, I do
Going through Mongolia, one of the homes, because he's an ambassador for UNICEF.
Yeah.
They'd have that component to it, and amazing, really. Came across her. Obviously, her means weren't good. Adopted her, and then she is on. 20 years later, they're meeting her, catching up as they're going through a certain spot in New York or America or somewhere. Amazing, mad.
Yeah.
The mad things in life. Anyway, sorry.
The PT thing.
You coming in?
No.
Oh. You're just like, what are we talking about here?
I've never seen an episode. So
We're on air.
But back to the personal trainer thing. What do you need the personal trainer to do other than to give you a program and make you do it? Like what's...
Yeah, no, that.
But can you not just get a program and do it?
Yeah, I suppose.
I've often thought you get them once and then you suck all their knowledge.
You know your stuff.
You don't need them anymore.
Company's quite healing.
Well, it's for people who maybe feel they don't have the discipline to stick to it. So if you go to the gym and just want to get some expertise, maybe go once. But if you actually want someone to stand over you and make you lift every weight they have to lift.
Well, there is that thing. At least you're obligated to go, and it's in your schedule. That's kind of appealing. And then, I was doing what's this? A shoulder press, dumbbells. I really put my shoulder out about a year ago, and just alternative stuff so you're not hurting yourself or just. I think they'd be better able to say, see, you have a weakness there. We're going to make that stronger. We're going to make you a perfectly balanced athlete.
Joe.
As opposed to me walking around with my oversized biceps. You know what I mean?
You're a power athlete.
I am.
I think there might be a touch of this is too aspirational here.
I'm going to drive a motorbike around the world. I'm getting a personal trainer. That's all you need to know about the first 7 minutes of this podcast.
How's life in your 40s treating you so far?
Is it a crisis? I don't know.
Sean Boylan as well in the mix.
Yeah, and Sean.
Yeah.
To Sean.
Are you getting a Porsche or anything? Or
will we push on?
Please.
So, people are talking about it in emails. So, 76-second trailer dropped yesterday.
Daunt and people like that.
Please do stay tuned. We'll have the latest news on this as soon as we get it.
He says himself, there could be some sort of split in the camp.
Exactly what Ireland did.
One thing everybody seems to be forgetting is that the team isn't a one-man show.
And here's Righty!
Is this the whole 76 seconds?
A minute.
What makes him a great player on the pitch makes him a pain in the arse off it.
Roy Keane is not going home.
Who do you reckon that is?
People are one side or another.
Roy Keane, the actor.
I feel he's
Saying Roy Keane's not going.
I think so.
He can't be replaced.
He got us to the World Cup. You're unmanageable.
No, it's you that can't manage. That's the problem.
I think he's okay.
You're a bad joke.
He's the best player we have.
You fucked up.
Your earthquake shook the nation.
I think we're done.
You don't ever tell me when we're done. I'm just getting started.
Saipan coming to theatre near you.
Are we going together? I think we should. I think we need a field trip.
And record straight away afterwards.
Yeah, I think
immediate
so. Yeah.
hot takes.
But that trailer was so good that doesn't seem over the top to do that. Like it looked like a very good film. It could be a seminal moment in Irish cinema.
Thoughts?
Well, the only thing
I didn't know how to respond.
the only thing that Saipan hasn't had is a feature-length dramatised movie, and now it has it. So, like, but like I can't wait to watch it. Like I said this earlier on, Steve Coogan as Mick McCarthy. Like I love, like Steve Coogan is my favourite show. Is Steve Coogan, you know, The Trip, where he's just going around.
You're making a new one
with Rob Brydon. Are they? Yeah. The last one was to Greece.
Yeah.
And I absolutely so. And he obviously has Irish roots. He once, I heard him do an interview where he was talking about, because obviously his mother is Irish and he's very good at doing an Irish accent as opposed to doing that stage Irish accent that a lot of actors do from different countries. But he said that his Irish accent lacks geographical specificity. So he's able to pull off that McCarthy sort of Barnsley. I'm sure he will be able to pull off the fact that McCarthy has that inherently Barnsley persona about him, but he's anchored in his Irishness as well. So when I heard about it straight away, I was just like, that's the perfect person to play Mick McCarthy.
It has Best Supporting Actor nomination written all over it.
Do you reckon? Yeah,
I do. Honestly, I'm not joking. He has previously got nominated for writing Philomena, so it's not as if they don't know who he is. He's a complete unknown. I feel like there's enough kind of scenery to chew as Mick McCarthy, and even what I've seen from the trailer, that I could see it being if it's a good film, I could see that performance being the one thing that maybe gets pulled out amid everything else to maybe get a bit of a push.
The Keane performance will obviously be analysed a bit more, because there are no good, like, the impressions of Roy Keane that we have are parodies. You know, we have Gift Grub, we have, you know, Connor sketches, all of those, and they're all very sort of comically done, Roy Keane's, and obviously there's a bit of a caricature there that he plays up to a small bit in his kind of punditry aspect. But this is a different Roy Keane. This is full rage Roy Keane. That's not. I think we're so kind of used to the parody Roy Keane. It'll be interesting to see how he pulls it off there. In that small clip, it sounds sort of really good, but it'll be interesting to see how he pulls it off for 90 minutes. What do you think, Joe? You're very quiet there.
I don't want to prejudge a movie totally on a trailer, so reserve the right to be wrong. I kind of thought it had the look of made-for-TV, 3-star, forgettable fodder. I was disappointed with how it looked. Just didn't think it looked like it had a big budget.
It doesn't, I'd say.
Yeah.
But what specifically did you not like? Obviously, McKay, if it didn't look like it was unbelievably, you know, well financed. But did you not think some of the acting we saw, or some of the potential?
No, I didn't. Not especially.
Okay.
I did look certain thing. You know, I thought the way Steve Coogan sat in a ball was very like Mick McCarthy. I like that. These are always problematic. Like, given that Roy and Mick are still so present in our lives, it's very hard to do it, to dramatise them. And there's always and it's a hard thing to hold against a movie, because it's, you know, they can't be held to perfect account. But there is just a thing that Mick McCarthy is very tall and Roy's not, and that's how you see them. And then in the trailer where they go head to head, Roy Keane is towering over Mick McCarthy. But it's more, I think Roy Keane's near impossible to play.
Yeah.
You know, I really do feel Aina Harwick, and good luck to him. I think it's a really tough thing to pull off. And, you know, even in the Damned United, just when it cuts to all the players, they just all look like actors. They never look like footballers. And I didn't think the cinematography, it looked great. I just thought it looked kind of a little middle of the road in terms of how it was shot. So I'm kind of arms crossed, thinking it's sort of an impossible task to begin with, and that people a little bit of remove, I think, is good. I suspect maybe in Spain, when they watch this with the subtitles on Netflix, they'll be like, God, that was very good. but I just feel very close to it.
See, you're talking about how it looks, and I have friends like this as well. The first thing they talk about a movie or a TV program is how well it's made, the shots and all that sort of stuff. And I'm less interested in that. I'm always interested in the storytelling. And what fascinates me about this is that the facts of this story are so well established. We've heard it from every conceivable angle, from all the participants. So I'm just interested to see how faithful they are to the specific details of it. Because I know that like Mick McCarthy got a phone call from Steve Coogan asking him, you know, what was it like? He wanted to portray him as faithfully as humanly possible. But there's obviously an element of dramatising it too. Or maybe it's such a dramatic event it doesn't need any further dramatisation.
The other thing I thought, the point of emphasis in the trailer, see, you're prejudging a trailer, you know, but the point of emphasis was what a big story it was, and a gazillion kind of, you know, reporters or newsreaders, and like, we know all that. I don't think that's an interesting angle if it's like, you won't get over the scale of this thing.
But is that a very Irish problem to have? Because if you're trying to, and presumably this film is going to be sold to a much more wider than just an Irish audience, you're trying to impress upon people
how big it was,
how big a story it was.
So I think with a bit of remove, you might find that aspect of the story, as in, God, this was like Civil War Part 2 in Ireland, quite interesting. For me, the only interesting thing about it, if you want to kind of have your best actor, you're Steve Coogan, the most interesting thing about this story is Roy Keane. By a distance. That's the drama, that's the conflict, what was going on in his head. That's where it's at. It's not Mick. It's not the wider, it was so big. And I didn't think from the trailer that's where they were going with it. Might be different in the movie, but I thought, yeah.
I'm also looking forward to seeing, you know, you mentioned the Damned United. I feel like that's how far back you have to go. I feel like we're massively underserved of films, dramatised films about professional sports in this part of the world. Yeah. Like even, you know, a lot of the famous sports movies generally, even going to America, are kind of fictionalised, like Any Given Sunday, which is unbelievable. It's not like it's not like kind of retelling a real life event. Like we were chatting lots about the Lions Tour 2005. Like for me, that could be a really good film. Like Alistair Campbell, Clive Woodward, Brian.
I feel like Steve Coogan could play Alistair Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's just his thing now.
Gonna be really busy.
Like,
what's Michael Sheen doing?
But like, and on the Lions team, think of Brian Cox, Logan Roy playing Jim Telfer in like a 1997 Lions movie.
Yeah,
that's pre-prepared.
No, I was pre-prepared because after that trailer, I was trying to think of other, like, you know, is there any other stories that haven't been told? I feel like for some reason they maybe don't think there's money in it. To your point, it does look very fake. Like the actors, they do look like actors. There's no. It's very hard to suspend your disbelief watching a sports film in that way.
And maybe they did well on that.
Yeah, they did a really good job with it. So I'd love for this to be a success, and then for filmmakers to think, oh, maybe there is a market for sports fans. Like you see how many people are watching, you know, Ireland matches. Say the Lions kind of joke I made there, but look at the amount of people who are at that match. Like there's a captive audience there who would like some sort of entertainment.
But, the Any Given Sunday thing and the players feeling real and it all being real. That's really important. Like, well, you want real authenticity here. And this just at a glance didn't really have. That's some of it. Like the kit looked kind of thereabouts. The weird Umbro sign aside, they obviously didn't have the license to use it, maybe, or something like that. But like King Richard was felt real good. Will Smith pre the slap won the Oscar for the King Richard. That was decent. The tennis scenes were good. Happy Gilmore 2's out.
It's not out though.
Oh, sorry, on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, I thought I missed it.
No. So, look, I could be being harsh on Saipan, the trailer. If you're going to go with that one, it needs to be really good, in my opinion. I'm not having a half-baked, the Saipan thing, let's do it.
Well,
I think it looked good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 2-1 here. You've been outvoted.
I particularly liked the bit, you wouldn't be able to have seen this on the podcast, but you know the little noises you heard at the start of the trailer? It was them doing the coordinates and the longitude and latitude of Saipan. It just looked cool, I thought. You didn't agree, obviously, but
again, I just have higher expectations here. You know, no, I didn't. It wasn't bad. I wasn't like, oh, this is a disaster. I actually realised when I saw the trailer how difficult this is to pull off. Maybe that's what hit me.
Well,
it's an impossible job.
Maybe there's a reason people don't do kind of sports films of that vein, because it is hard to pull off. Like, that's why I'm actually really intrigued to see if they can make a good fist of it.
Yeah. We push on.
Why not?
Duffer fallout continues. A lot of jokes at his expense on the email. Certain Schadenfreude. There's kind of like the going gets tough, Duff gets going thing. Hi, Joan Coe. Is anyone else just relieved that in hindsight Duff hung around Saipan long enough to play the games? Segue. Like, steady on. He was at Shelburne for 4 years. That's a really good stint. The League of Ireland, or sorry, the Republic of Ireland thing, some kind of weirdness there, I grant you. Wembley, Videogate, or just not gelling with Stephen Kenny and decided to go. But I suspect it's more FAI, Wembley Gate, and just, I'm not having it. So maybe that was a little bit impulsive. But 4 years at Shelburne's a good stint. Like, I know he's left in extraordinary fashion on the eve of Champions League games, so that goes against him. But this hasn't happened after 6 months, in which case I'd be all for the jokes. Is he now super flaky?
No, but I think like there's definitely, I wouldn't say so flaky, I wouldn't say, but I think there's definitely like signs of impetuousness, you know, like according to the players, he just kind of came in and said, you know, thanks very much, I'm off here. And, you know, like if you're a manager and you think you're getting through the players and you don't think it's going anywhere, like you kind of try and dig in, but it's almost like he felt that he wasn't able to affect the change that he needed to happen anymore.
Well, the way he sort of presented it is, I'm driving this whole thing. I'm the energy. I'm the motivation. You've sucked everything I've got to give.
Yeah.
And I've asked you to try and take ownership of it. You won't. He's tried every stunt in the book and the battery's flat. Am I reading it?
Yeah.
Without knowing what he's had to say about
but
it.
It kind of ties into the profile of Damien Duff, the manager, that he's been, like, you know, say the public spats that he's had, you know, with Stephen Bradley and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Just that, like the last time we were talking about Damien Duff, and we said that he always seems like he's on a war footing, and that can be a good thing as a manager. But you just wonder whether he'll come to regret this, you know. Like, I know he doesn't have to probably ever do another manager job ever again, but as a club, Shelburne feel like the sort of club that are going places, and being in the Champions League, they have the chance to go places because, you know, as Shamrock Rovers have proven, a decent stint in Europe can have a transformational effect on your revenue streams.
Yeah.
So, like, to have taken them from Division 1 to go up to win the league was a monumental achievement. And it's not sullied or tainted in any way by his departure, but it's, you know, like, they've taken a couple of steps backwards, obviously, this year. They're so far off the pace. But it just seems a little bit hasty.
Agreed. Very rash. Very emotional.
Yeah.
I could see him going back in. Like, it wouldn't shock me if he was the next Shelburne manager. Like, after Joey O'Brien, like, you know, at the end of the season, coming back in. Or honestly, it honestly wouldn't shock me if when they play Linfield, it would surprise me. But what's the distinction? I can't remember which one is the less of the two.
We agreed it was hard to find a genuine distinction.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But like, if someone said, oh, they've, you know, Mossy Quinn and a delegation have gone and he's back on, he's decided to come back, and he admits that it was emotional, I wouldn't be like, oh, wow.
Yeah. It seems like a tired decision, and therefore emotional. Last night, Sean O'Connor was at Shelburne against Waterford for the paper away game. Mark Coyle, the captain, who you remember spoke in the group after Duff had told them he was leaving, as per Dan's piece. So he was saying, massive shock to us. In a way, we're also very sad. Mark Coyle, for context, as Dan was telling us yesterday, was working part-time in a hospital in Letterkenny, had never been a full-time professional footballer. Duff saw something in him, brought him down to Dublin, captain of a league-winning side. I spoke at the time, this is in the huddle when Duff had just announced on Sunday he was leaving, but you're in that much shock you don't really know what to say. I just thanked him because he did, in a way, change our lives. It was that quick, there wasn't much really said. He's the reason I'm here, he's the reason everybody's here, so we're very shocked. But we have to respect it. He's done it for himself. Did I think it was going to happen? Definitely not. There's no bad blood or nothing. We have to respect his decision. And then he was asked, was the criticism of Duff's on Friday about the team, you know, I took a siesta, I rested up, I ate well. Did they? Look, he's got that in him, and we know that. So at the time, I didn't think too much of it, to be honest. Probably just that he was looking for a reaction at the time. That's how I looked at it. Maybe he was wrong about the preparing and all that crack, because I don't know how he would have known that about us, how people prepared. So I don't agree with that part of it. And he cited a lack of confidence in the group as one of the reasons for results, as opposed to poor professionalism or a lack of motivation.
I took from that is interest. I found what Mark Coyle said interesting, because what he basically said was, because obviously one of the things that people have commented on a lot is how willing Damien Duff seems to be to criticise his players, like individually in some cases, publicly. And that's never a particularly good look. Like, it's a very old school way of doing things. But according to Mark Coyle, or from what I took from what Mark Coyle said, is that he interpreted that as Damien Duff trying to get through to the players themselves. That was a kind of a message towards them, which kind of changes it, I think, a small bit, because even the stuff that Duff had about when they had the week's break in the middle of the league, and he talked about everybody going to the airport the next day, you could see that it's just, I don't know, it's almost like too much of this stuff kind of grated on him, the way the league is run, the organisation around it, the professionalism of players or whatever, he kind of found it. So
yeah, he was quite an old school manager, wasn't he? Like,
yeah,
pretty much all his outlook publicly about kind of players, what they should be doing, was very, very old school. Now, at the same time, you and Dan discussed that he was trying to play more progressive football. So tactically, I think he wasn't old school, but it was a funny marriage between those two things.
Completely old school.
Yeah, like
moulded entirely by his environment, which is understandable. He left at 14, 15 and told his mum, who told him, "You're always welcome back, son." "Ma'am, I'm not coming back." But all his key pillars, tenets of management are old school. Like his go-to phrases, his kind of life lessons, these are all of that late 1990s, 2000s academy football environment.
It sounds even older.
Yeah. Well, I guess the people who were working in the academies then were very much of the 80s. So he is directly plugged into that. That's formed him. That's shaped him. That's how he's lived his life ever since. Completely agree. Like totally old school. Stephen Bradley said, "I'm sad to see him leave Shelbourne." He was talking last night after Bohemians once again just razzle-dazzled Shamrock Rovers, beat them for the third time this season, played extraordinary football. One of the goals is off the charts. It's incredible. There's like a sideline view of it doing the rounds if you haven't seen it online. It's amazing. He was obviously a very, very good manager, good coach. He's a good person, said Stephen Bradley, showing lots of class. And he is and was very, very good for the league. I'm sad to see him go. Hopefully he's back in the league at some point. Do you want a taster of the "don't like Duff" email? A bit like Duff himself, the language here is too emotive and too strong. I don't like the language in this. It's kind of shitty, but Duff would appreciate it in a way. But the sentiment, I think, is there from other people as well. "Hi, Joe and team. I have to say I find the whole palaver around Duff embarrassing. The guy's a grade A clown." It's that kind of a thing. Craving attention every possible juncture. The need to be heard. The frankly childish interviews. He embarrassed himself weekly. Again. Embarrassed, strong word. Clearly modelling himself on Mourinho, bit of Roy Keane thrown in, the endless need for sound bites and attention. Was he good for the league? Probably. But he also gave off the impression that he was doing it a favour rather by being in it. I've zero interest in the League of Ireland. Never have. Jesus. Never have, never will. But clearly his name was big attraction to the league. Equally, I'm sure it will manage fine without him. Goes on to say, found him tiresome. Maybe he should do something that doesn't appear to drain him of life's pleasure, eh? Would be interested to get your opinions. Keep up the great work. David in Cork. I think that was a minority view out there of Duff. I know he felt that a lot of people hated him, but I felt that most people loved him.
And the idea, it's funny, of him craving attention. Certainly he generated a lot. Pretty much everything he said was unbelievably quotable and like it was a lovely soundbite. But it's funny, like people who are colourful, does that mean they crave attention necessarily? I don't know if he craved the attention. He was just happens to have a very funny turn of phrase and a very blunt way of speaking and a kind of old school way of looking at a lot of footballing issues. I'm not sure if that meant that he necessarily craved attention, even though everything he did generated it. I'm not sure if I'd say that about him necessarily.
Yeah, the other thing, like I wonder a small bit with, like, obviously when he came into the League of Ireland, he was not your. He didn't meet the kind of typical spec of League of Ireland manager. He was coming here as a player who won how many international caps?
100 actually.
Was it 100 in the
On
end?
the nose, yeah.
He had a huge career in the Premier League, so he had a level of gravitas, I think, that he took with him to the job that meant he could probably do or say anything he liked at the very start, but then he won the league. So, I mean, like the fella has one of the all-time great football careers of any Irish football player at the top level in the Premier League, and then came to this level and didn't kind of act like it was kind of beneath him, that it was some sort of a charity thing. He was totally immersed in this, more than it even seemed, because when he was a player, we used to hear all the time about how he was always asleep.
Laid back.
Yeah, laid back and all the rest of it. Whereas this was the complete opposite.
And he would correct people if they talked in disparaging terms about the league. We played a clip even in yesterday's show where, he said greatest league in the world, and fella's like, no, I wouldn't agree with that. And he's like, no.
Yeah, I remember.
And he meant it very sincerely.
I think I remember Nathan Murphy, after he was appointed, saying something like Shelbourne's sleeping giant, and he said, no, they're a giant.
Johnny Ward.
He
played that clip yesterday.
Yeah.
Did you listen to anything we do? What podcast were you listening to? What was the last thing? Is that the countdown thing? That's what you're busying yourself with.
I was just listening to the Offaly Lads episode again.
But I agree with you, and I think there was. I thought he was very authentic. So he wanted to live at home. That's why he wasn't still at Celtic and missed his kids. But then, like the way he talked about the Rovers under 15s and then Shelbourne, like he could, one, have been enjoying the good life with 20-30 million in the bank, or two, working at a higher level. Like Keith Andrews wants him to go to Brentford, is the reporting, and he's saying no. I thought there was an element of patriotic pride in him getting involved in Irish football. I really did. And not the full thing, and there's ego and he just wants to be busy and do something, but I thought there was a bit of that, So he wasn't there to like make money or do it for like any kind of nefarious reasons. It was a very heartfelt love of football. I feel love of a dressing room environment, bit of patriotism, being at home. I think it was all that stuff, and there was a lot to like about that.
That's why it feels so disappointing and abrupt, because I agree with everything you say there, and yet it feels like he's just packed it in. It does feel like, ironically after playing the Saipan clip, it does feel like this kind of just like impulsive, like, we played the audio of him after the latest game, and just he was annoyed, but not to the sense that he'd walk away. And now, like with the Champions League game looming, that's why I feel like there could be some like talks behind the scenes maybe to try to get him back, because it feels like a really like spur of the moment impulsive decision, because he had built 3 or 4 years, as you say, of like a legacy there, of like not just there for a brief period of time. He cared about the league, and it feels like he's just thrown that away.
Yeah,
very like quickly.
And his players can reserve the right. I know Mark Hall said we're no bad blood. Look, there absolutely, some of them can feel, okay, not gone well. You walked out on us right before the biggest game of our lives. Where's the love that you talk to us all about? Where's the commitment to each other? I think that could be there. Dan said something very interesting yesterday. He felt against Derry. It was the first time, and he's there and has a feel for it, and he's there a lot watching the players. First time he felt some of the players, to use Dan's phrase, weren't having it.
Okay.
He just saw something, and maybe Duff in particular smelled that a mile away. I'm fascinated to know where this, like, did they prepare as well as me come from? Like, what's he seen? What's he heard? Is there like an Instagram reel which has since disappeared of the player sunbathing somewhere? It just felt so specific. Like the last thought I had in him is just, this is going to sound more disparaging than it's meant, the word, but there was a very understandable immaturity to his management style.
Yeah.
He was a quintessential first-time manager. It was raw. It was unfiltered. There was manic intensity. It was 24/7. There was a feeling of, if I don't work myself to the bone and obsess over this at every second, then I'm either cheating myself, back to that old school mentality, or it's not going to be successful. It's all about winning today. There's no medium term. Every training session is a referendum on our attitude. And, I always use Carlo Ancelotti for some reason, or Roy Hodgson. Like, those boys sitting back having a cigar could have said, you're going to burn out, son. And he did burn out. So it had all the hallmarks of first-time manager, and I'm fascinated when if he does go back into management, does he say to himself, okay, I need to like lessen this by 50% and it'll still be quite successful. But I know, he'll be like, bullshit.
But do you think that's
only one way of doing it, and it's 100%.
I think
that's how I do it.
I don't think he has another gear that way.
But he has to develop that if he wants to do this for 30, 40 years. He has to develop it. You'd have a heart attack.
But like Jim McGuinness does that in a different code. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has the same thing where he has to be in control over everything. He's pushing everything. He's fighting media battles. I don't like invoking, but like, it's the same sort of energy. Do you know what I mean?
He gets 6 months of the year off.
Well, that's true. That's fair enough.
And the league is the league.
Yeah. Well, they were in Dubai in October or whatever, Abu Dhabi or whatever it was. But I'm just saying, I like what we're saying about Damien Duff as being possibly the reason he went, ergo some sort of almost weakness. You can identify it as a strength in plenty of other managers. So I'm not sure, like, I think that was probably, without knowing and without having seen it very often firsthand, the reason for his success.
And I'd say he sees it that way.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like I do 3-4 year stints, I burn out and then I take a break and I go back in 2 years' time. Maybe that's his career.
Is your sense that he left because he was burnt out? Mine is that he just became fed up with the players.
Both. I think burnt out, therefore emotional, therefore tired, therefore made a rash decision. I think
All feeds into each other.
standards and like, why aren't my thing? What? Because how telling was it that Mark Coyle, in trying to be nice about it, said, "Oh, the criticism on Friday. Look, we just know that's how he works. I.e., we're now less sensitive to his shtick than we were in year one. Year one, if he'd said that publicly about us, holy you want to see training next week. Now it's like, what Mark Coyle's saying there in a very nice way is they heard the comments on Friday and he's like,
Here we go again.
Duffer, he's on it again, gas man. As opposed to, Jesus, did you hear what he said about us? So I think a frustration that Duff's first-time manager toolbox wasn't getting the same reaction it was getting in year one or year two. And again, I think Carlo and that the wizened types, like Duff should be talking to Roy Hodgson. That should be a mentor for him. They were together at Fulham, didn't they? No, I'm almost sure they did. Yeah. Roy Hodgson's advice there is, listen, really tough after a winning season. You're just going to have to get some of these boys out. Fresh boys in the off season. Just sit tight, have a crack in Europe, have a decent season, try finish second, and then clear out 3, 4, 5 of them. Start looking at new players now. You go again. Don't lose your mind. It happens.
I thought you'd said Carlo Ancelotti in Fulham. That's why I was looking at you for a second.
No, Roy.
I don't recall that.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think burnout, but I think standards of players. But that could be harsh on the players. Like Dan again would have said, the change of system hasn't helped some of the players. Few injuries, bit unlucky in certain games. Yeah. Are the players completely down tools for him? I think they're still with him.
Yeah, I just don't see why he couldn't have fought through this season with the Champions League card and then it's gone again in the summer. And if he felt they needed a clear out.
That's the burnout point, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why it's so fascinating.
There's a lack of logic it's a rash decision.
But even in hindsight, what we were talking about last week, the roaring and shouting at the Rovers players and the management about their lack of class, that's just a guy at the end of his tether.
Yeah.
I don't think that's I don't think that's on the level comparable reaction to the offence that has been caused, if you want to call it that way. I think that's
song in the dressing room.
Yeah,
I think
totally. That's like, a group of footballers singing a dance anthem. Like, it's not exactly they didn't exactly come in and start ripping up the Talca Park signs around the place.
Very, very bad for the league if we don't see him again.
Well, it's very bad if, what looks to be happening is going to happen, which is one team cruise to the title, because you don't have any flashpoints. And like last year, it was incredible as a run in the number of teams that are involved and the twists and turns that it took.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he was just amazing. Where you're in the good old days when you're in the good old days and all that. As an antidote to the I don't like Damien Duff email, a shout out to Mike, who just took the time to send this to us. Like, if he'd written it to Damien Duff at gmail.com, it would have been one thing. But he said, "Hello, Indosport. It's a shame this has happened. I think he could have benefited from having a mentor. I hope everything works out for him in his next move. Kind regards, Mike."
A genuine email.
Just want to put it on the record, Mike, and we'll read that into the record. I agree with everything you say there. That's Duffer. We're not going to get through everything today. Lions, GAA. Looking at the two. Lions,
we can ditch the Lions.
Lions, GAA. Oh.
Well, I was texting Luel during the Lions game the other night. We were having a very erudite conversation.
Honestly, for the first time he's ever texted me during a rugby match, and he's texted me a few times that it hasn't been like some sort of sneering observation.
I have very few people in my phone book that will accept a text about rugby and actually respond with something.
He'll often send, not often, don't know, exaggerate.
Come on, don't.
There'll be he'll just write like at a very rugby moment, an anthem or it's a goosebumps. Is what he'll send.
But I think I texted you during Ireland's column was like goosebumps recently as well.
Did they
just keep forwarding it?
Just forwarding it on to
Okay. I'll go GA quick. How about that?
Yeah.
5th of July, Dublin Cork, All Ireland Hurling semi-final. Column Keys, back page of the paper today. Ticketmaster have sold out their allocation, and the remainder will be distributed to clubs. Now, he reckons, Colin Keys, they'll hit 70,000.
Yeah, I think so. Cork could bring a huge number, and it could be the only Dublin team left in the championship at that stage. So it'll be a big one. I know you were arguing earlier on that Dublin have somehow done the great game of hurling a great disservice by depriving of the Cork Limerick All-Ireland semi-final that everybody has been licking their lips for since the Munster final. But
I didn't mean it in as kind of mean a way as that. But yeah.
But I'm the one telling the story, so I'm... But no, Donald Cusick has made this point for a long, long time, and I agree with him, and I appreciate that I'm coming at this from a very sort of invested position. But as great as hurling is, and it is a wonder, and the hurling summers are brilliant, and the dynamics and the rivalries and everything are so established and so fascinating and so kind of pregnant with tradition and history and culture and everything else. Like the one thing that hurling could do with, no more than like rugby could do with, or any other sport that has a small number of sort of principles, it just needs something new. And like, I know people say Dublin are the best equipped to make the step up, but the harsh reality of it is they're probably the only county that's equipped to make the step up, and the potential is definitely there for it. And beating Limerick was a good way to go about announcing your arrival, if that's what it proves to be.
Well, if they give it a good go against Cork, brilliant. But if it's a 9 or 10 point defeat and a bit flat, that's all I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Like when Cavan beat Donegal and it was great, and then they played Dublin in the semi-final during COVID and it was over after about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think it, like, even just thinking about it now for the first time, about the dynamic of that semi-final, I just think it's going to be fascinating, because Cork are now coming to Croke Park in a completely different frame of mind. Don't care what anybody says, there's going to be a lot of talk about Cork having this All-Ireland to lose.
Yes.
And they'll tell everybody that that's not the way they're thinking, and they will think that that's not the way they're thinking. But it is a very different semi-final to what they would have expected. And Dublin are in a very, very interesting space where they don't have it, but they'll put pressure on themselves, you know. I think that's the point about where Dublin are. It's not supposed to be a flash in the pan.
Yes.
This is the level of performance they expected of themselves. I spoke to Neil O'Callaghan after the last game, and he made the point that, look, if you put all the bits and pieces of our performances together this year, it didn't quite happen in previous games other than the Galway game, but there was lots of good within it. And this was the day when it all came together. And if that's the real representation of where they're at,
yeah. If it's 70,000, what percentage will be Dublin fans?
I'd say there'll be 25,000 Dublin fans. Like, Cork are the best supported hurling team in the country.
This would be their, I mean, if it's sold out, their 6th sell of the season. Cork hurlers.
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
That is
incredible.
incredible.
They're hottest stick in town. Poor footballers are like, Cork, come on.
Yeah. Well, like, when you consider the number of years there when Cork weren't getting up to Croke Park, like what the GAA did without. Like, Cork are the quintessential, you know, hurling needs a strong ... The answer there is Cork.
Yeah.
Cork always need to be up around here, because what they bring to it is exceptional. Because I was at a couple of those days. I was even down in Thurles last year when they beat Tipperary, and the Tipperary crowd was absolutely tiny. But the pitch invasion and everything else afterwards, they are like, we need to see far more of that.
Yeah. There was Michael, who's a cornerback from Tala. Lucky to see a lot of Dublin footballers from 2010 onwards. Today was better than all of the football wins. So he sent this 7:30 on Saturday evening, aside from 2011. Otherwise, it's the best day for him in Dublin GAA. Their work rate, tenacity, sheer bravery, truly humbling, he said. Moment at the final whistle blew, I was overwhelmed with emotion, tears in my face, hugged a stranger beside me who were in a similar state. It's a feeling that validates all the countless dreary days spent in Corrigan, Parnell, Nolan Park, wondering if we'd ever regain our form from the daily era. Don't think I've ever been happier walking out of HQ. Sorry for the ramble, etc., etc. So, happy Dublin fan. Quarterfinals this coming week. You're buzzed, as good as it gets. You think the both days could be close to sellout, you were saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way that they've organised the fixtures now, it's designed for that, really. Because obviously, if you put the Dublin Tyrone game and the Kerry Armagh game on the same day, you'd probably sell 100,000 tickets.
Well, that's what Donegal want. Statement last night. No other counties played as many matches as Donegal in this year's championship. 8 games within 11 weeks. On that basis, we thought it wholly reasonable, fully justified to seek an extra day recovery time. This is most regrettable, very disappointing. Our request has been turned down. The welfare of our players not adequately considered in the decision-making process. So they were last out on Sunday and now they're first out on Saturday. They have a point. It's just the season. Either Meath Galway or Donegal Monaghan. Well, Monaghan have had these, you know, coasted through the season, 5 weeks off, and then waltzed through their group stages. So I think they're well rested. But either Donegal or Meath Galway were going to be upset, and it's Donegal who were upset. That's what, 9 matches, less than 12 weeks since they started in Ulster. It's a lot.
Yeah. I was reading Ger Brennan was speaking about Donegal at the weekend, and he commented on a metric that I've heard around the place a small bit: repeat sprintability, which is, you know, your capacity to go flat out and then recover very quickly and go flat out again. And he was struck by how well conditioned Donegal were about that. But I mean, 3 games in 3 weeks, that's going to test that.
Now you could be churlish and say, well, if you'd won your group.
Well, that's the fact. Like, Pádraig Joyce said that in Newry. He said, look, we won't be giving out about it if we are put out on Saturday. But I suppose what the CCC have effectively decided was that Galway travelling to Newry for their last game was a bit more of a hardship than Donegal being in Ballybuffet.
Yeah.
And that it was more important to split the two biggest games to get the biggest crowd.
Well, that's I like,
And that's the correct decision. That is the right decision.
to get the sellout.
Not to have Tyrone, Dublin and Kerry Armagh the same day.
Yeah, but I could understand if they did it the other way around. You know, like that's a commercial decision, and it goes over like it takes a smidgen of fairness away from the whole thing for the weekend.
It does, but just as Donegal say in their statement that it's entirely reasonable and justifiable for us to say that, I do think it's reasonable for the GA to say, well, look how many people we have to serve and how many people we could get in. Like I know there's a commercial element to it, but it's not purely commercial. There's a lot of fans who have been waiting for this weekend and waiting for this end of the championship, and to get as many of them into Croke Park as possible isn't some sort of solely nefarious financial idea either. I don't think.
I agree with you. I always think that as a principle, the GAA should never be in a situation where they're keeping people away from attending a game that want to attend a game. You know, I mean, as a general rule, I think that's a good one to bring. So you throw it all into the pot, but on a more general point, like by the time we're finished, I can't remember the last GA season that has had as many sellouts. Whenever the attendances are totted up at the end of this, we're going to see something truly amazing.
Oh, listen, it's our daily thank you, Jim Gavin moment. Daniel Wiffen, just to mention a split from his coach. It's not acrimonious. It sounds very splitty, but Olympic gold medalist, bronze in Paris as well. He's been at Loughborough University for the last 5 years, so he's coming home to Ireland and looking for a new coach, a new personal trainer, if you will. Only decided 2 weeks ago. It was interesting the reason why. So Manley, Andy Manley as coach at Loughborough was like, in this university program you're still in, there are 17, 18-year-olds coming through. They're a lot lower level than you, and you need, at this point in your career, to strive to be around better. So Daniel Wiffen going to base himself here. And then Lions finally, good old-fashioned war of words.
It's brewing.
It's broken out again. So Ben Cavely.
I struggled mightily with that surname earlier in the left wing.
Calvele.
Calvely, I think.
The Lions chief executive has basically the war words is over Australia releasing their players to play for the likes of Western Force and the Reds and Waratahs and the Brumbies. Joe Schmidt doesn't want to release his best players to get smashed up in these games. So Ben Cavely said, well, sorry, Joe, you're contractually obliged. That's the deal. And Joe Schmidt, I mean, if you're going to go at the king, you best kill him. Joe Schmidt said, I've read the tour's agreement. Andy Farrell's like, what agreement? I haven't read it. He said it's about having the best intention to have the best quality players available and play. So therefore, we're not held to anything.
I don't think it's a good look for the Lions to be going around telling the opposition manager what they should and shouldn't be doing. I know the Lions run this operation and it's their gig, and like really the guests in this situation are the hosts, like our Australia, but
there's a great worry that these matches are going to be real blowouts.
Okay.
Yeah, because a big thing for this tour was this is the first one under a new commercial agreement whereby they were allegedly meant to secure a greater number of Australian players in the warm-up games, which Joe Schmidt is saying not so. But that was meant to be the big thing this time around.
It is really fun in a Lions tour when like the Brumbies beat the Lions or it come close. It's 50-0 half time. Yeah,
especially because in 2021 in South Africa, because of COVID, the Springboks couldn't travel between the camps because they were meant to be in their own bubble. So it's 2017 the last time when we got to see a proper Lions tour. And that was like Sonny Bill Williams played for the Blues and it was class. They beat the Lions. Yeah. It did feel like a huge occasion when some of the All Blacks were filtered down.
Yeah. David, who's in Melbourne, greetings from the sporting capital of Australia. I'm heading to the Lions game in MCG in a few weeks' time. Is that one of the tests? MCG?
Yep.
MCG? Second test?
Second test, I think, yeah.
Where's Brisbane first? And then Sydney?
Sydney is last. I'm not sure it was first.
Yeah. In a city where, ironically, Melbourne, there's no longer a rugby union team. Interesting to see the support. He reckons 3-1 Lions supporters. On the topic of ticket prices, tickets initially released a few months back. There was chaos. Being proactive, I got my ticket in the nosebleeds for 359 Australian dollars. That's about €200. I know people who paid more than this. However, in recent weeks, demand has waned. My girlfriend jumped on the bandwagon and got herself same ticket for €55. Yours, David.
So it's like the Club World Cup.
You need to just show a bit of patience. Yeah. And Jeff. Oh yeah, I can flick through that. Lions fever. Oh yeah, sorry. He thinks Australia do well, but actually he was saying about Australia, because I'm not as au fait with this how the breakdown in Australian states. He says it's hard to gauge Lions fever. I'm one of the many young Irish people in Australia. The strange thing here is the states are a bit like Irish counties with football and hurling. Some of them have huge interest in union, some rugby league, some AFL, and then there's the northern territory where it's too hot to play any sport. It's hard to get a sense of anticipation, etc. He goes on, and then he says he thinks Australia on the up, tickets 190, love the pothole as well. Grand. That's the gist. I had a look in the paper today where you all picked your Lions teams.
Yeah.
Do you know it was fascinating? Have you looked at this?
I picked my team before the first match.
It doesn't matter though.
Okay.
So you, Rudd,
Keane, and Michael Sadler.
Yeah. Your teams are basically identical.
Are they?
It's incredible. One of you had Blair Kinghorn at full back, the other three had Hugo Keenan. But then it was like Tommy Freeman, everyone, Ringrose, everyone, Tuipolatu, everyone, James Lowe, everyone, Finn Russell, everyone, James Gibson Park, everyone. The front row,
all Irish.
Everyone except one person at Will Stewart instead of Furlong.
Yeah.
Second row, everyone Tyg Bernatoje.
Yeah.
And the back row, everyone at Curry, everyone at Conan, and it was either Van der Fleer or
Pollock.
But I was like, whoa, that's taking some of the fun out of the next few weeks. If you're, 4 independent people, same team.
All those teams were picked before the first game, though.
Is it changed now?
Well, I'm not sure necessarily, but there might be some changing.
Did you hear what Will Slattery asked Andy Farrell?
No.
Friday. The neck of him.
Oh, this is a real. I was setting out my stall as a serious journalist with this.
So, Rode was telling me that, Andy Farrell, not happy with the performance, players, blah, 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 not good. Hand up. What about the responsibility you bear, Andy, for tonight's performance? What? Jesus. That's not how we do things here, son.
No,
the English press.
I was like, look, we're spending a lot of time critiquing the players. How do you think you performed tonight, Andy? And he looked at me and he said,
I can respect the question.
Yeah, no, he was like, look, it wasn't a good night for me. I had a lot to improve on, etc., etc. But I was actually just curious to see what he'd say.
You were struck by the English media.
Yeah, because it's funny, Conor, like I was going into this, obviously they'd lost unexpectedly, so I was like, I'm looking forward to this now, seeing the English press and the famous English media, like
heard about these guys,
tearing them limb from limb. Not a single of the big English reporters asked a question to Andy Farrell. I just was flabbergasted. I didn't know if it was because there was 9 English starters and potentially they were like, for some maybe patriotic reason didn't want to go in hard on a performance when there's so many English players. I was genuinely just curious because Rudd asked a few questions, a few Irish guys did, 1 or 2 English kind of radio people did, but none of the
heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters asked a single question. That's one of the reasons I piped up, because I was like, Jesus, no one going to ask anything here. Like I was just genuinely curious. I was expecting it to be a bit of a bloodbath, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. But I know it's only the first game, but because it was such a shock, I thought they'd have something to seize on.
Is it that big a shock
that they lost to Argentina?
First day out against a test side.
If anyone says to me again that it's not a shock, they were 10-1. So if you don't think it was a shock, Joe, you should have paid off your mortgage with it, because everyone keeps telling me, why are you calling it a shock? It was 10-1. They were 18-point favourites. I thought Argentina would give them a good game.
Not in a million years should it have been 10-1. I didn't know it was 10-1. But would you have had a 10-1? A test side
no.
play together?
I expected Argentina when I saw the team sheet to give them a good game. Yeah. And I thought the Lions might win by 4 or 5 points. I did, but I didn't think they would win.
Against a scratch side.
Yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me, the result, but
you're shocked.
It was 10-1. It was 10. So everyone bellyaching.
I'm not shocked.
Everyone bellyaching about it. It was 10-1, so you had a chance.
That's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe most 2 horse races shouldn't be 10-1, but
a
test side who know each other under a great coach, looks like in Contepomi, against a scratch side. Come on.
I'd be interested in what you're talking about, though, Will, the dynamic there of because it's a funny press pack when you have people drawn from 4 different countries following around, particularly when it's Irish dominated. And as we've discussed, Ireland probably aren't the most popular rugby country just at the moment amongst its kind of brethren. Now, I know everybody kind of pulls together for the Lions or whatever it is, but when it goes wrong, or if it goes wrong, then I would be fascinated to see how everybody reacts to that one. There'd be a lot more Will Slattery grillings or of that ilk.
We're pretty much done. Slightly longish bits and bobs. I knew it was going to be long. Lots going on. I had a good email. What do you think?
Go on, do it.
What's your gut? Are we already cutting stuff from this podcast? Or is it
probably, yeah. Well, we can cut enough to fit it in, so
it mightn't be very good. Just last week on the
no.
on the most hated county.
Okay,
but this was quite thoughtful as opposed to everyone hates Meath people. Following your discussion on most disliked county and GA circles, I think an obvious candidate was overlooked. Tipperary. Listen, While Tip don't top the All-Ireland Roll of Honour in hurling, they're third. Their geographic location makes them uniquely positioned for rivalries. They border nearly every major hurling county in the country. Limerick, Clare, Galway, Offaly, Laois, Kilkenny, Waterford and Cork. Take each of those and you'll find Tipperary's had fairly venomous rivalries with them at some point. Tip fans often refer to their county as the home of hurling. And when they do win, no one on the other side of the border is allowed to forget it. Tipperary Town, Roscrea, Clonmel, Carrick-on-Suir, Nenagh, Thurles. Every border town erupts in celebration, often crossing the line, literally, with spray-painted signs and roads to make sure neighbouring counties know where Liam resides. As one Galway man said to me after halting Kilkenny's drive for 5, 1 year of Tip winning was worse than 4 years of Kilkenny winning. And then he says there's the chant, Tip, Tip, Tip.
If that gets on your nerves, I'm not sure it's their problem.
What is he going to say then? Interestingly, Tip's recent lean spell. You rarely heard pundits lament their absence. As with England at a major tournament, there's a unique satisfaction amongst rival fans in seeing Tipperary knocked out by a neighbour. Unfortunately for the rest of us, good times may be coming. The under-20s minors showing serious promise. Tip's re-emergence at senior level looks imminent. Keep up the great work in the podcast. Though a bit more hurling chat would be very welcome. Best regards, Kieran. There you go. In hurling circles, maybe Tip. Wouldn't think the football fraternity are like frothing at the mouth over Tip, but
the geographical point was good.
It was good. And Tip.
As I can acknowledge the existence of that sentiment among the counties that were mentioned in it.
Yeah.
And I would also like to acknowledge the fact that my wife is from Tipperary and I don't want to make any further comment.
Well, much like you, she's not listening. Alrighty, fellas, we're done. Conor McKeown, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
Slattery, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
See everyone.